Hey, I'm Michael LeBlanc, and welcome to another Divine Dirt Inspiration. Hope you're doing well today. Today, I wanted to just visit the idea of, well, with all the crisis, and I use that word a certain way, going on out in the world, is there really anything I personally can do? Is there anything we could do? So that's what I really wanted to talk about today, because I think there is. So I have a variety of random thoughts and ideas and practices, and we'll see if we can connect the dots as I share them today. Hey Chuck, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Your garden, my friend, looks amazing. Hi Helen, how are you? Please say hello as you're chiming in. So today I want to chew on the idea of, well, what can we do? How can I help this sort of global situation? And is there anything I can do? And I do believe we can, but I do think it involves remembering some things. So I want to talk about that. So I'm Michael LeBlanc, and Create with Consciousness is the name of my company. I am an author, a coach. I do energy work. Teach workshops, etc. And really my passion, though, is about helping people know we really are divine beings. And we're being human, but as divine beings. And there's a knowing of that that's pretty empowering once you tap into that. And then the other is, if I am a divine being, then how do I participate in manifesting specific things in my world? How do I influence this world? And I do think we can. So those are kind of my what I do. So one thing I was recently watching an interview. So a buddy of mine named Eric Reed, he's phenomenal. So we'll just start there. But he was interviewing a woman named Lois Stark, and she wrote a book called The Telling Image: Shapes of Telling Times. And I've ordered it. I'm waiting for it. But one of the things that they hit upon was there was a culture she was visiting, and they didn't have the word for you. And as they kind of were able to work with the culture and translating the meaning of you, to them it meant my other self. And I think that's one of the key things for us to remember right now, is there really isn't another you. There isn't a me and a them, or an I versus them. I do genuinely believe we are divine beings, all connected, all part of sharing a oneness of a divine mind. And I love that culture and that story, and how their interpretation of you, because it didn't exist in their language, was it's my other self. And when I think of what's going on out in the world, and I think of the violence, and I think of the anger, and I think of the hatred, and then I think of my other self, that's my other self, that I am that. And that does something for me. And so I invite you to ponder it, because we're not so different. And so that's one of the thoughts I wanted to share. The other is, with the notion, and what I do believe is we are this divine consciousness. So if that's true, and I am this divine being, and if I go within, and I am connected to the whole thing, and I genuinely reach a deep space of feeling this true, what I call the energy of love and the energy of peacefulness, and I envision myself as a divine being connected, right? That they are my other self. And I send this energy, this love, this peacefulness to this situation, and I do it in a felt way, not an analytical way. My brain cannot solve a damn thing going on. and it will drive me crazy if I rely on it. But you are a part of a divine mind, and that has access to everything. And so I think another thing I can do personally in a time like this is I can go within and I can genuinely feel and send the energy of love, peacefulness, relief, well-being to those folks and to the situation. And I genuinely believe as I do that, because there is one mind, there is a connectedness, it does something. And so I invite you to do that, and I invite you to ponder that as well. So that's another idea I wanted to throw out there. The other is around around racism. And as a white man and as a white gay guy, so I'm a white gay guy, and it's foolish of me to think I could have been raised in a culture that racism runs in the culture. It's in the consciousness of the culture. And there is no way on earth that I could have ever escaped it, because it is in the consciousness of our culture. It was how it started. It still is. It's better, sure, to a degree. But there's still a ways to go. And so I think for me personally, what can I do to help is, one, I need to own that. Well, of course, as a white guy or any gal who was raised in this culture where racism is part of the consciousness, you didn't escape it, and you got to deal with it, and you got to deal with it within yourself. And so I think there's an ownership that has to happen for me, and I can only speak for me, and then I can only share what I kind of do, and then in turn hope that helps somehow. Hi Ellen, hope you're doing well. Keep saying hello as you chime in. So that's another piece of it, is I have to own that raised in a culture that has racism in its consciousness, then yeah, there's degrees of it that I would have bought into, maybe not intentionally, but it's going to be there. And that's mine to now deal with and address and notice when those reactions happen within me and deal with them and overcome them and move past them. So there's that. So I'm going to kind of recap on 3, and then I kind of want to share a little bit of a story of another idea. So one was this, for folks chiming in, the culture of, there is a culture. So the book was called The Telling Image, and the culture, they didn't have the concept and the word you, and what it meant for them when they thought through what you meant, and for us, was it meant my other self. And I think right now it's important we realize there's only one mind. There's being diverse, and diversity is natural, and it is going to happen, and it is happening, and it's supposed to happen. And so what's happening now is a result of a culture that really had oppression and has oppression within the culture. And it has if you fit this box, you're good, and if you don't, then we have issues with you. And as a gay man, it's true for me, but not anywhere near what a lot of other gay friends of mine have had to deal with. Because it depends on how far outside the box you land. Depends on how hard the oppression hits you. And so as we think about what can I do, one, remember, there is no you. That is my other self. That self you might be, that other out there that you're mad at or wishing they would do that, is my other self. Neil Donald Walsh, The Conversations with God, I was watching a mastermind with him, and he talked about an exercise. He goes, go around and say, I am that, to everything. So if you meet a homeless person, it's I am that. Right? So there's people who are outraged, and there is a right, but I don't agree with the violence of it all. But there is I am that. It is not so far away from something that I could have possibly done, put in the same situation and time. So there's that. the other thing I want to kind of recap before I tell my story is if I go within and I know I'm connected and I know I'm part of this oneness and I'm a divine being and I feel truly the sense of peace and energy and well-being, then I can send that to that situation and to those people, and it is genuinely doing something. But I have to feel it. This isn't about thought. This isn't anything your analytical mind can accomplish. You leave it to drop it and been there. It can be scary, but feel the energy of that love and send it, and it is doing something. So the other is I wanted to share a story personally of how it was a moment of choice of, do I choose love or do I choose hate? Do I choose fear? Do I choose my not understanding? And so when I was in my 20s, I decided I was going to come out to my family and tell them I was gay. And specifically my dad. My dad and I have always had an easy connection. We've always just this mutual, kind of a little mutual fan club. I love him, he loves me. We got along pretty easy. And the idea of telling him I was gay was horrifying because I was afraid I would lose him. I was afraid he would no longer want to be with me. I was afraid he would no longer want to be around me. He wouldn't understand me. He would treat me different. And so I remember the day it happened, and I was sitting on the farm, and he and I were hanging out in his backyard. Now, when I wanted to come out to my family, he was going to be last on the list. I figured I would practice with everybody else because he was the one I was worried about. Well, that's not how it worked. He was the first one. So he and I are sitting, and we're visiting. And the moment, I can just, you have it. You feel, if you tune into your divine self, it'll tell you now is the time. And it said, now is the time. And so I decided to tell him I was gay, but I didn't want to use the word gay because it means too many different weird things to people. That isn't necessarily what it means. And I decided, well, tell him what I'm doing. And what I was doing at the time was I was dating men. So that was my approach. So here we are, my dad and I. My dad's a captain of the football team. My dad was a boxer. You know, my dad worked as a miner. My dad's, but he's a sweetie. So I sit there, and I'm got fear I may lose everything if you tell. And it is still emotional because losing his love would have horrified me and hurt. So I spit it out. I said, Dad, I got to tell you about something. He goes, what? I said, well, I'm dating men. And then he of course, he kind of fumbled for a moment. He goes, what? I was like, don't make me say it again. And so I told him, I said, I'm dating men. And then this whole conversation evolved, and he went all over the place, right? It just opened this door. It's like all of a sudden he's having a personal conversation, and he hadn't had that in forever. So he just went for it. And he would come around, and he would get upset, and he was like, well, why are you telling me this? And I remember looking at him, I was like, well, so are you saying you don't want to know me? And then he took a minute, and he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And the conversation continued. I will always remember, he looked at my truck. He goes, man, different than talking about truck. and we both sort of laughed. And I told him, I said, look, I don't care if you understand what I mean by being gay and that I'm dating men. I don't care if you even like it. I just can't handle if you treat me different. And that's what mattered. I needed him to not think less of me or different of me. I didn't want to lose that with him. So at some point, this exhausting conversation came to a close, and I remember getting ready. I got up to leave, and he grabbed my arm, and I had that moment of like, oh shit, he's gonna deck me, right? It was just this like, oh great, and he didn't. He pulled me in his lap, and he just hugged me, and it was his way of letting me know, you never need to worry about us. I also think he meant you never need to talk about this again. But it was his way of communicating to me, we are okay. Now he could have choose to be fearful. He could have chosen to be scared. He could have chosen his I don't like this and push me away. But he did not. He chose his love about it, his love for me instead. And I think as we are experiencing crisis, and I think racism is real. I mentioned it earlier. If you were born in this country, it's in our consciousness, it's in you, and it's yours to deal with. And the best thing you could do is deal with it and own it. And don't pretend it doesn't exist in you. That's the worst thing you could do. But my dad chose love in that moment. And so I think I'm going to come back to how I started. And Eric, I want to thank you for your interview with Lois on the telling image and that culture that didn't have the word you. And it meant my other self. And so whoever or whatever you're having a lot of judgments about right now, there's one divine consciousness going on, and that is my other self. And I can judge it, or I can send love to it. And when I say send love, I mean get out of your head, I mean get into your heart, and feel for the energy of this real thing, and send it. There is no violence and there's no hate without there being love first. Love is an energy, it's a vibration, and there's only degrees of it. Violence and hate is a degree of love on the very far end. As we return back to the fullness of it, you start experiencing all the emotions in between. So, there you go. I told you I was going to share a lot of different ideas and thoughts, and they may be connected, they may not be connected, but you get to connect them. So yes, to just kind of recap again, there is something you can do about the current situation. Remember, you are connected to it. It is a part of you. Remember, you can feel the energy of love and peacefulness and send it. Remember, you can choose, like my dad did, over his confusion, because I promise you he was confused. I promise you he struggled. And he chose to stay with loving me instead, even though he didn't understand it all. So choose that too. All right. So anyway, I hope today was useful. Again, like I said, I will share just what I think and what I do for myself, and if that helps, awesome. Again, I'm Michael LeBlanc. CreateWithConsciousness.com is my website. Michael at CreateWithConsciousness.com is my email. If you ever want to chat, I do free consults. I do just like, if any of this around your being divinity and you're wanting to know how to use it to truly manifest improvements in our world individually, globally, give me a call, chat with me. We'll do a chat and see where you are. All right. Hope you have a beautiful, wonderful day. Well-being is the core of us. There is an upward trend to the universe. And if you think of your own personal growth, it has not always been pretty. It has not always been great. And it's not always great. But well-being, the underlying current, and that is what's going to still, regardless of news, we'll take. Love you all. You have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Keep saying hello. And we'll chat again on Thursday.